Hello and welcome back to another video. Now today of course we will be painting Clone Captain Rex. So as you can see, I've chosen to go for the phase 2 look, and I've already based him with Astro Granite and Earth Crust from the Citadel range. I'll also be using Citadel paints today. And I'm sure if you're familiar with the way I paint my clones, you'll already know how we're going to start this. I don't have any spray primer at the current time being, so for the black prime we'll be using Abandoned Black. Applying with a thinned paint. Okay, that was a bit too thin. But applying with a thinned coat, we can get a good base. Now, as I'm sure everybody's aware who has watched our other videos, my clones are, as I like to put it, a grimdark style. Okay, so now that one's dried, let's get into the next step. So as everyone knows, I paint my armor by priming black and then doing a dry brushing of Administratum Grey, followed by Corax White, and finally finishing it up. Sorry, our paint's got stuck. There we go. With a little bit of white scale. This just helps to get a nice looking transition and a nice looking armor. So I use my wrist just to make sure I have the right amount. And this is more of an over brushing. Just to get that nice amount of detail and to try and get as much out of the model as we can with the simplistic steps. I plan on going into a bit more detail because Rex is a character model, and by doing so I plan to, a bit of foreshadowing, I'm going to be trying my best to do the welds and as many of the tallies as I think I can do, because while a much more senior painter than my co-host, I am still a fair bit of a novice. So there we go, there's that first one done. So we will progressively be getting less and less paint to dry brush with, or doing much more selective dry brushings as we get more. We will be going in with white scar after our final dry brushing and just emphasizing some details that we want. So unlike our arcs, Rex does not have a grey belly, as I put it, yeah. So we're just going to make sure that that part isn't grey. And we will be going back over with our black later, so that way we can get the actual suit underneath. So there is the next step. And finally, we will be using a much smaller brush than our previous ones, So this is my equivalent to a dry brush. If you guys were interested in the hobby tools I use, feel free to, those who do see this, to leave a comment. So now just not a lot on our brush, and just trying to pick up those. I would also be interested, to those who do see this, to tell us what your favorite moments of Rex are. I'd love to see them, because I do love the Clone Wars, and I am, have to say, a prequels fan. So I do always love the clones, and that is kind of the reason I picked this army. So there's the armor so far. We will be fixing this part of the black, and we'll also be going for the little bits of the suit that did get covered. Looking from underneath, that's also it. I really like this, the way I do my armor, because it's a more simplistic way of doing it, but I just think it adds to the aesthetic, and yeah, and it's just like an easy process to replicate over the entirety of your army. So now with the whites done, we will start with the blue, the markings. So we're going to be using Macragge blue as our base, and as our selective highlight color we will be using 1000 Sun Blue. I like to add variations of the blues among my army to try to make that individual feeling, or the feeling of individuality a bit better and a bit stronger. That's why all of my clones have unique markings, and yeah. So we will start with, I will zoom in on this one. So we're going to start with the markings of his helmet, which I need to thin that a bit. Sorry. We will start by creating that little line around the visor. Keep in mind you can take your time with this, and don't be afraid to take your time, but to also fix up mistakes if you make any. Painting, especially on this kind of scale, it's always going to eventually lead to mistakes. And yeah. So that's the first mark. Now time for the very fun ones. I know that isn't correct, but I don't know how I'm going to recreate that. I think that's going to be the best I can do at this current stage. Recording this is very difficult. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on how those went. I will definitely come back and fix those up, but for a very rough and first cut of that is honestly pretty decent in my standards. So now the markings, and this will be the same on the other arm, is that Rex has the little blue stripe on his gauntlets, and that is then followed up all the way through the arm, and I believe it's also done on his little elbow pads. He also then has markings that little blue bit, so that little let me get my reference up. There we go. So then that little bit on both legs is also blue. I'll do these marks first before I do the actual welds of where Rex has merged both Phase 1 and Phase 2 armor. So he's got that, and then all the way down, and it's the same on this arm, except this little bit is also fully blue with the recesses being black. So I just gotta get some more paint. I apologize for this unorthodox painting tutorial. By the way, I thought I might just mention that I don't know whether you guys have watched one of the more recent episodes of that the Ahsoka TV show, but live action Phase 1 Rex. Whoa, that was really cool to see in the background of that episode. And then that little bit of blue on the knees. And I believe that, oh, no, I nearly forgot an important one. So around his little, I don't know what it's called, his little skirt type thing, the little war skirt, that rim is also blue. I'm being a little bit messy there, but that one's easy to fix up. And so if you wanted to, you could call this battle ready. That is definitely considered battle ready. It's got all the colors needed. It's looking actually quite nice by my style. I like it. I like how it's looking. Now, but I know someone's gonna say eventually, or potentially anyway, that about the tally marks. I am not patient enough to do them, and I'm already coming back to fix up the little horn things he has on his helmet. So yeah. But anyway, oh, sorry. But anyway, getting back on with this, we will go back to our baton, and we will quickly fix up the undersuit. So these little parts. And this is where we are going to be doing our edge highlighting and all of our leathers and everything, because if anybody who has seen our other clone painting tutorials, you'll know I like to have a little bit of extra color by painting the belt and the holsters and those little joining straps brown, because I just think it looks cooler. And I know it isn't show accurate, but nah. Oh well. It's my army. I can do with it as I please. I was debating when building Rex to get one of the extra jetpacks I had from the ARCs to put it on the back, because you can run Rex with the jetpack. I ended up not doing that, and whether or not I'm actually kind of happy with that idea, because I believe it'll just make him look a lot more cohesive with the rest of the army. And considering that I made an entire squad with and an entire squad without jetpacks with a couple in between, I think it just makes the army look a bit more cohesive. So now that we've fixed up all those details that needed to be fixed, we will start with the welds. So I'm going to be using a couple different methods. So the welds on Rex's armor are they're a brown, like, to begin with, but then they have a blue kind of, mark through the middle. So for those that little brown weld area, we're going to be using Steel Legion Drab and a little bit of Morning Fang Brown mixed together. For that in between, we'll be going with a Temple Guard Blue. And I'll see how it looks, but we will also be washing them with Cryptek Armor Shade. So the first one of his welds are just above the brow of the helmet, and also on the cheeks of the helmet. He then also has the last welds he does have are on the waist, coming out on the sides. I'm gonna try my best to get this done. And I'll try to do as many as I can on camera, but I don't trust my ability with this. So I might need to move slightly. So I'm using probably a 75 to 25 ratio on the Morning Fang and Steel Legion. Just trying to make a slightly darker color. And I'm sure there's a paint for it, but I just don't have that, at least at the current moment. So starting with the sides, They start at the lower part of the breastplate. So I'm saying they're roughly around there because they go from the little bottom of that lip to the top of the, or to where his arm would go. And if these aren't exact, I'm gonna just say, hey, it's a weld. It's not meant to be exact. So the next ones are on the cheek. These are going to be a bit difficult. Let me just double check with my reference art. I would highly recommend using a reference art when doing these. Oh, there's no paint on that. I know that looks like rust more than it does a weld as of currently. And then the last one is just on top of the brow. And it kind of intercepts those little markings on his helmet. So that is the base of the weld. And I reckon if you wanted to call it there, you probably could. And I'm going to change my order of operations because I think I figured out a better way of doing these. And that is to go straight to the Cryptek shade, or armor shade, and thinning it with about 50-50 ratio of paint to water. And I will zoom in a little bit more, as much as I can, because we don't want to completely and utterly cover it, but we don't. But we just want it to become a little bit more visible. I think that's turned out actually quite well. And it's just darkened them a little bit. And honestly, I might just go with another coat of it to just try and help exaggerate them a little bit more. Because if you look at the actual model of Rex, they are quite noticeable. So from all the art I've seen, those are the main ones you'll actually see. And so I'll wait till those dry, but we will, before I do the actual mark, or the inner marking of it. So we're going to go back to, yeah, I know there's no order to this. I'm going to go back to White Scar, and we're just going to use it a little bit thinned with water like you normally would, to just try and bring out some of that white color back. So I know for my case, I will definitely be wanting to put a little bit into those markings again, but exaggerating things like these little panel lines. That's a really nice thing about clone armor, is it's very line heavy. And it'll just add to the model to bring some of these lines out. And if you wanted to, you can add some stippling, like I've done on other clones, to just help emphasize the white armor on particular parts. But I'm not going to do that for Rexy. But if you choose to, that's completely up to you. At the end of the day, as I said earlier, it's your army and you can do as you wish with it. So now putting that little bit of white through those marks again has very much helped it. I don't know whether if Rex has anything on the back of his helmet. I haven't seen any. And because of him being a main character, I don't think we've ever seen if he has anything on the back of his helmet. So that's my Rex so far. And again, if you wanted to call that battle ready, you definitely could. He's definitely more screen accurate than he was, well, a couple steps ago. And for my little flares, we're going to start by just adding some Thousand Sun Blue. Sorry about my pronunciation there. And we're just going to do exactly what we did with the blue. So that's just made that blue pop a little bit more on his shoulder so far. And adding it to the visor means we can just fix up any mistakes we may have made. And just add a little bit more depth to those markings on the helmet, to those knees, and also his kilt. That's what it's called. Now coming back to just make sure my brush is filled a bit, we will start doing the arm markings. So for these ones, I'm just running it purely down the center of each mark. And it doesn't really matter if it's a little bit messy because, well, the clones are all individual and Rex is definitely one of the most individual, so having little splotches of paint or having them be slightly messy is fine, or at least I believe so. So Take my word if you'd like, don't if you don't want to. Now, one of the last steps before I'm going to be finished and then get onto the base, which you all know how to do by now, is my leathers. So I'm going to start with the base coat of Rhinox hide. I very much love painting leathers. I find it's probably one of the better things I'm slightly better at. So we'll start with a clasp. And the holsters. And I know that these are meant to be one piece with his kilt, but I just really like the look of this. And I thought it looked good on my arcs, and so Rex will get the same treatment. Making sure to go on the inside and getting that little tiny strap that connects them to the belt. And not to mention also getting the belt, and I'll grab these, what I assume are pouches. Again, if you guys don't like this, you don't have to do it. I think it looks nice. And I said it once, I said it twice, and I'll say it again. At the end of the day, it's your army, and you can do with it as you please. So now completing those, or that base coat, I'm going to go again to Morning Fan Brown. And we'll be just going for the edges of this. I go for a thicker edge highlight when doing this kind of stuff. Now, because leathers especially are never going to be perfect, if you are messy with this, it isn't the end of the world. And if it goes on anything else, you can just fix it up with the same steps that we've done earlier. So there we go. And the final color that we'll be using is going to be Steel Legion again. And so I'm just going to be running it in a diagonal. And then just going towards the lower bit of these pouches. And it just helps to add that kind of leather effect. And I honestly think that's where I might call it, because I'm happy with how he's looking. Oh wait, no, one more thing. It's talking about those little lines in between the worlds. So again, getting out Temple Guard Blue, we just need a very, very, very small amount of this. In fact, I might swap to a smaller brush. So just getting a smaller brush and a tiny bit of paint, not too much, just a tiny bit. We just want to go in the center of these worlds. And we just want that tiny bit of blue to show through. You would probably also want to do a couple of coats of this. Yeah, you definitely want to do this in at least 2, I'd say probably even up to 3 thin coats. There we go. I'm happy with how he's turned out. And I think that's where I'm going to end this. Because all know how to do my basing theme at this point. And yeah, there he is. Well, thank you for watching again, and I hope that you all found this tutorial interesting. Wish you all the best, and hope you have fun with your Legion.